First of all, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining Horizon's Hot Topic webinar. Today we're talking about BIM from a facility management data perspective and ARCHIBUS. Horizon's committed to helping our clients excel by offering the latest software, service, support, and advice. Part of our mission is to share the evolution of the IWMS solutions and demonstrate the ability of these solutions to address changing business needs and promote the value of facility data within the context of the larger enterprise. As organizations are looking to create greater efficiencies, ARCHIBUS, integrated with tools like BIM, is really designed to reduce costs, provide strategic insight into the building and asset life cycles, and the integrated ARCHIBUS suite can save organizations time, reduce effort, eliminate redundancies, and serves to give greater control of workflow while extending the utilization of data and reporting of that data for managers and executives. BIM continues to be an important topic in the industry, understanding that AutoCAD drawings comprise the majority of clients' facilities portfolio now, but the interest in this topic is evident by the large number of people online with us today. We hope that we'll be able to offer some insight and background when thinking about Revit BIM for facility management, whether it's for new projects or renovations. So before we get started, I have 3 reminders. Upcoming webinar links are posted on the website, so topics like creating 20% energy savings, ESRI and GIS, enterprise integrations with finance and HR systems are all on the docket at about 1 per month. So be sure to check them out and sign up for any of interest, and feel free to share the list with colleagues. Also, Horizon continues to educate with training sessions, offering in-class or custom-tailored either online or on-site. But we're also hosting some scheduled courses soon: ARCHIBUS Fundamentals, Systems Admin, and Advanced Programming course. For full agendas and dates, just go to the website www.horizon.ca, and you can get all the information there. Finally, I also wanted to mention the exciting new on-demand online training library that we're rolling out this September with downloadable training sessions either for purchase individually or by subscription. So that's coming soon. But you're here today to talk about and learn about BIM. Due to the limited time, we're going to save questions till the end, and you'll remain muted for now. But feel free to type questions in the dialog box on the lower right of your GoToMeeting console. We'll do our best to get to them. And I am recording this session, and it'll be available on our website as well, should you wish to review it again or share the information with colleagues. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Jasmine Jakes, an ARCHIBUS subject matter expert here at Horizon. Jasmine brings a depth of ARCHIBUS knowledge, particularly how it applies to real FMM workflow experiences. And she has a particular interest and focus on design and architecture, and is one of our ARCHIBUS certified professionals. She's spent much of her over 6 years with us as part of our implementation teams, and is likely known to a good many of you. Jasmine, thanks so much for your time, and welcome.
Thanks, Ayanna. We're looking at the agenda for today's session, and I'll just start off by saying that BIM has been around for quite a while. Bridging the gap between design and facilities management continues to be the hurdle for many clients. The purpose of today's presentation is to demonstrate a simple approach to sharing data, whatever the data may be. We are going to show how easy it is for valuable information to move between the model and the database using Revit and ARCHIBUS, and take a look at some of the other functionality within the ARCHIBUS extension for Revit. So, building life cycle refers to the stages or phases that a building goes throughout its life, starting with planning and conception through design and construction, and then occupancy to decommissioning and demolition. It really is a linear progression, but because this happens all the time to all buildings, it's considered a cycle. So when you hear that term building life cycle, it's referring to those phases that a building goes through. So traditionally, there's been a strong distinction between the phases of a building. In many cases, the owners were also the designers and contractors and even occupied the property. Most of the work throughout that process was done locally for that reason. The modern way, with new communication and construction technology, eliminated the need for local work, and professionals at each phase can be based out of different locations. As a result, communication between professionals becomes more complicated, and the transfer of accurate data between those phases of the life cycle is the challenge. The BIM process has come about in part to address this issue and provide clear guidelines for data flow between phases, reducing data loss throughout the building life cycle. So BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. BIM is a per-project collaborative process that provides a framework for the stakeholder interaction with the purpose of streamlining administration, improving design, setting data transfer guidelines and responsibilities, and overall reducing the cost of the project. At the center of this process is a 3D-based model produced with software like Autodesk Revit, which serves as the project reference and is linked to all the stakeholders. Revit allows for data transfer procedures and for separation of the elements so that the required professionals only have access to their pieces of information they're contributing to the model. Revit is a 3D modeling tool that is the tool of choice for the BIM process. It is a single application that includes features for architectural design, MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, as well as structural engineering and construction. It uses parametric objects, which are intelligent building components that allow for easy manipulation and hold many attributes about that building element. Looking at the integration side, the BIM process prevents data loss by assigning owners to that data. Since it is a collaborative process, all the stakeholders have a say about the data. A BIM implementation plan is developed to identify which data should be collected at each phase, then which data should be updated between the phases, and who is responsible for that data update. ARCHIBUS, being a data management tool, implementing it into the process will be beneficial for the overall data management throughout lifecycle. ARCHIBUS is typically seen in the building sometime after construction and occupancy. But if the building is constructed through a BIM process, then the facility managers hopefully will have a place at the table during data requirements, and the FM requirements can be captured early on in that process. Then when the operation and maintenance phase comes about, all of the information is already in the systems and you're ready to hit the ground running. Many clients are talking about the transition from AutoCAD to Revit. The challenge for us in this industry is that the primary data is currently located in AutoCAD. Converting AutoCAD drawings into a Revit model would be a very large undertaking for the purpose of facility management, especially when the CAD drawings are already available and manageable. New projects where BIM has been used is a great way to get started using the BIM process and Revit in ARCHIBUS. Both applications can be used together as well. New projects can incorporate BIM and the asset lifecycle integration, and existing buildings can remain in AutoCAD and link to ARCHIBUS. And the transition, when renovations and updates occur, can then happen from AutoCAD to Revit. No one has the time or budget to go cold turkey BIM. Develop a plan that fits your budget and capacity to get you to that goal. ARCHIBUS offers modular components that fit into various points throughout the asset lifecycle, and that's what this slide is showing. So with that said, connecting the Revit model and ARCHIBUS is quite simple, and synchronizing the systems and the data is simple. It's the nature of the data, and what data needs to be captured and maintained is the hurdle of identifying that. Preparing the model for FM use. Preparing a model specifically for facility management is an important step in the process. Revit models can become very large. They have many models that are linked together to create a master file, which requires a lot of workstation horsepower that is unfortunately not readily available for the average facility manager. Preparing the model simply means making it manageable in both size and data that the facility manager cares about. Cleansing the model of any non-required data will make for a model that is easy to maintain. Like I mentioned, if ARCHIBUS is introduced at the beginning of the BIM process, the data synchronization and mapping would likely already be established when the O&M phase begins. If not, the model and ARCHIBUS data mapping is the next step to begin using your model in ARCHIBUS. This feature allows you to determine which data in the model is going to update and flow into ARCHIBUS, and which data and updates from ARCHIBUS will flow out of ARCHIBUS and update the model. And we'll take a look at this data mapping in a bit more detail in the slides as well as in the demo. So lastly, the catalog feature is an automated process that reads those data mappings flowing into ARCHIBUS and can create and update data records. So a click of a button will scan through all of your tagged assets and create records in the database very quickly. So starting your inventory is very easy. So now we'll take a look at some of the other features within the extension for Revit. So for the next few slides, existing users will see all the functionality you've come to love and appreciate in the overlay. And for new users, we'll look at some great productivity enhancements to keep data and graphics in sync. So for those who are familiar with the extension for AutoCAD, an ARCHIBUS ribbon holding a series of functionality is added into the Revit interface. I'm going to give you a brief description of what all of these commands do, and then we'll take a look at most of those in the demo as well. The first one is the properties command. So the properties command is what creates the ARCHIBUS link to a specific building and floor. The catalog command. So this one, as I mentioned, is a very powerful tool for data creation and updating. It reviews all the elements within a model of a particular type, compares them to the project database, and looks for matching records. If a record exists, the record is updated according to any changes that have been made to the element in the model. If a record does not exist, a record for the element is created in the database. So it's a quick method for creating and updating inventory based on model changes. So for this reason, when you're getting into your model, this should be used whenever any new elements been added or any changes have been made to any element or asset in the model. This command also includes the ability to ensure there were no errors that occurred during the process. When the catalog command is complete, any data validation issues will be displayed and allow for correction right from that dialog. So a handy tool for also correcting any issues. Now we'll take a look at a few of the most used commands while working with the model used for updating data. The edit data command, edit data multiple, number, and set asset. So edit data allows the user to enter information on an asset-by-asset basis, assigning ARCHIBUS data from a validated list and updating the database in real time. Edit data multiple allows for a selection of assets and have data for all of those assets selected be updated at one time. So if a grouping of offices have become workstations, just as a space example, this can be done on any kind of asset, whether equipment, furniture, telecom. You can update all of those assets and say they are now workstations rather than offices, and have all of those changes be updated in one shot. The number command allows the user to set up a numbering scheme for linking assets to the ARCHIBUS database. So if your assets don't have tags or a unique identifier, this tool is good for establishing that sequence. The Set Asset drop-down menu shown here shows almost all the different types of assets that can be synchronized with ARCHIBUS. It allows you to pick one of these assets to work with when you're synchronizing the data. So when you're running the synchronization, it's not synchronizing everything in every asset throughout the model. You choose what asset type or group of assets that you want to synchronize the data with. So it does speed up that process as well. The web query command and publishing. So these are two commands that work with Web Central. The web query command will go out to the ARCHIBUS database and bring into Revit a Web Central view about that asset that you've selected before you've hit the web query button. So this view can be sent to either a PDF or XLS as well, right from within Revit. And we'll take a look at this in the demo. Publish Enterprise Graphics creates a set of files that are used to view and work with floor plans in ARCHIBUS Web Central. We'll take a look at that too. Now for a closer look at the synchronization aspects. So these tools all help to complete the asset lifecycle round trip. It provides clients with the ability to seamlessly and automatically move data between the model and the FM tool, as well as allowing clients to establish the source data definitions once and apply it many times after. So once that mapping is identified, it can remain. You can tweak it as you need to as the process or as new data comes in, but that mapping is reused again and again. So under synchronization, we have a couple of other options, and I'll briefly kind of describe those, and then we'll take a look at the actual configuration of that. So read database fields pulls data from the database and updates the parameters in the Revit model. So like I mentioned with catalog, it's reading those changes to the elements in the model and updating ARCHIBUS. This command does the reverse. So whatever is flowing out of ARCHIBUS and updating the model, read database fields is the synchronization command for that. Map database fields allows the Revit user to map the parameters with ARCHIBUS fields. So this is the most powerful function for maintaining the data as to suit your business process on updating. This command asks the user to select an element, so what type of asset you'd like to map. Is it a room, equipment information, furniture information, that type of asset, and then presents a list of parameters appropriate for that element that you've selected. You can then map any Revit parameter to an ARCHIBUS field, and this is what we'll take a look at in the demo as well. Disable dynamic updates. So this command enables and disables the dynamic updates that ARCHIBUS includes. Meaning, so dynamic updates are automatic updates when items change in the drawing. So for example, if the size of an office is changing, that area element and the area that goes with that is automatically updated when that change is made to the element. So, and that's great to keep everything in sync as you're working on the drawing or the model, but if you're making bulk changes and many changes are happening in the drawing, you may wish to turn off the dynamic updates so that can speed up those manipulations and won't affect any data in ARCHIBUS as you're making those changes. Once you're done, you can enable it, catalog, and all that data will then be reflected in ARCHIBUS. So the remainder of the functions in the drop-down menu are tools to ensure the model and ARCHIBUS data remains accurate. Highlight widowed assets is a command that presents a list of assets in the model that do not have an associated database record in ARCHIBUS. From there, it allows you to either create the record in the database or remove the asset. Highlight duplicate linked entities presents a similar list just showing of assets that have 2 or more assets associated with the same record. So any kind of data discrepancy can be handled through these commands. Uncatalog records without assets, again, presents a list of all model elements that have ARCHIBUS parameter data but do not have associated records. And you have some options to correct that data right from these dialogues. The last 2 features are more power user or administrative functions to correct any discrepancies, which we can take a look at another time. So I'll talk a little bit about the bidirectional configuration, and then we'll jump right into the demo. So the ARCHIBUS includes functionality for administrating BIM data mapping right from within Web Central. So over the web, you can control and map data that way as well. For those not familiar with BIM terminology, categories are a group of model elements such as walls or beams. Families are classes of elements in that category. So wall studs that come in various sizes and materials can then be identified at the second level. And parameters are specific information about that particular element. So that's the field-to-field kind of mapping that we'll take a look at in more depth. So we're looking at the parameters mapping table, and it manages specific parameter mappings to assets. Here we can specify what ARCHIBUS field the asset parameter maps to and whether the model is the source record of information or if ARCHIBUS is the source record on a field-by-field or parameter-parameter basis. Having the flexibility to determine what data flows out of the model and updates ARCHIBUS and what data flows out of ARCHIBUS and updates the model is very key to this, to maintaining the data to suit your business process. Here we are just looking at some of the room asset type mappings but you can do this types of mapping for any asset in the model. So again, that's equipment, furniture, telecom assets, that type of thing. So any data, any of that valuable information that's holding in those parameters for any asset in the drawing can map into ARCHIBUS. So you'll notice on screen that model-driven versus database-driven, that is the dictating the source record. So is that information coming from the model and updating ARCHIBUS, or does the ARCHIBUS database update the model? So with that, I'm going to jump right into the demo, and we'll take a look at connecting to an ARCHIBUS project through the extension for Revit. We'll take a look at the properties. I have a model that's already been linked to ARCHIBUS, so we can take a look at that synchronization. We'll update data with the edit data command. We'll run the catalog just to show how that is an automated process and the kind of the speed that goes with that. We'll take a look at the data mappings that have been established already and some of the asset properties. As well, we'll take a look at the web query and the publish enterprise graphics command. So I'll minimize this, and I have Revit open with, like I said, a model that has already been linked to ARCHIBUS. So we'll take a look at some of these features that we just went through in the slides. So the first step is signing in and connecting to a project. So we'll sign in. And you can see you can select your Web Central link, enter that, connect to specify a project if you have multiple projects under your Web Central, and your username, password. And we can hit OK. So you'll notice before we actually signed in, all of the commands under the ARCHIBUS ribbon are grayed out. So you have to sign in order to start updating the ARCHIBUS data and make sure that connection's been established. So I'll select the Properties command, and we'll take a look at that linking to the building and floor. Again, here you can specify units, and this is the first step when bringing a model online, is associating that building and floor attributes, and then linking any other assets and tying them to this location. So we'll zoom in here on space 140 here, in Office, and we'll take a look at the Edit Data command. So by invoking this command, it's asking you to select an asset. So if we select this space, it presents a dialog that allows you to update any information that goes along with that space. So we can pick from a validating list and say this is an office. So choosing from validated data already been established in ARCHIBUS, and then automatically updating that record in the database through the model. So again, edit data multiple, just to recap, is the same as edit data, but you can select multiple assets, see what information varies, and then make changes to apply that to all the records or all the assets that you've selected. So I'll run the catalog and show you kind of just how that works. So when we select the catalog command, it asks you to select an asset type. So what element in the drawing or element type do we want to catalog with ARCHIBUS? So I'll scroll down so you can see all the different assets that can connect by default. And then we'll select rooms. And then you have a couple of options on how you want to catalog. You can select multiple assets, select by a rectangle, so do a quick window and highlight what you would like to catalog. You can catalog the current view, so a specific level, and catalog everything on that level, or you can catalog an entire model in one shot as well. So you can see the power behind this command. So I'll show the current view and hit OK. And it runs through 203 rooms fairly quickly, and will present that data validation dialog once it's done. So it's scanned every room asset in the model, looking at those data mappings and how they're set up and what data should be going into ARCHIBUS to be updated. Making those updates and then presenting you if there's any validation issues that you should take a look at. So in this case, there are none, but like we saw in the screenshot, it would list them here, and you would have some options to correct that data on this side of the dialog. So the next one I'll take a look at is the synchronization. So in order to invoke the synchronization and for it to present the mappings for what you'd like to see, we'll set the asset type in this drop-down list. So if we were mapping equipment, what parameters we want to map to ARCHIBUS, we would select equipment. For this example, I'll show rooms. And then under the synchronization drop-down, we can say map database fields. So like I mentioned previously in the presentation, this is a one-time setup. So once you've established the parameter mappings, you don't have to rejig these every time you bring on a new model. If your BIM process, if ARCHIBUS has been introduced early in the BIM process, hopefully those mapping and the requirements will be uncovered early on, and this will be identified before you actually get to O&M phase. So right now we're looking at all the parameters for area assets or rooms in the model. Whether or not the source data is coming from the model or the database. And then we can actually pick from a drop-down menu what field in ARCHIBUS that data should be mapping to. So we can see it lists all the fields under the room table, and you can easily just pick and assign where you want that data to go in ARCHIBUS, or what update in ARCHIBUS will then update this parameter in the model. So a very powerful tool for that Revit modeler using the model to update the ARCHIBUS information. So the other thing I wanted to mention here was also you can update ARCHIBUS information directly from the properties panel of an asset as well. So here we're seeing the same information that we've just saw in the data mapping, and you can actually select, see that drop down, make an update from here, and have that reflected right away in the ARCHIBUS record as well, being that the model is the source record for that field of information. So something cool to note there as well. You can also do highlights of a whole model through the properties dialog as well. So I'll show this quickly. Color scheme. If we look at department, and we can apply. So it reads in all of those colors you've assigned, and if we hit OK, we've color-coded our floor plan based on division department assignments. So a cool way of color coding it through the model as well. So I'll just flip this back to none for now. And OK. The other command I was going to show was the web query. So for that, I'll select an asset, flip back to the ARCHIBUS menu, and invoke the web query command. So I'll set this to full screen so we have a better view, but this is loading right within the model screen. So this shows you some information about that asset you've selected. You can also do this on a group of assets and use a window to make your selection of assets in the model. Shows you the personnel assigned to that space and any equipment and furniture that is also located within that area. So a cool feature, and again, you can export this to PDF and XLS right from here. So you can see up top, it does just apply a filter, so it's really loading in all of the data for this specific level you're looking at in the model. So you can do any kind of restrictions right from here. If you want to look at a different room without actually selecting it, you can do that from here as well. So using the search buffer line and using the white boxes to restrict the data is available as well from here. And the last one I was going to show is the Publish Enterprise Graphics. So like I mentioned, this is the routine or the process that creates the Flash files that we see in the Web Central piece of ARCHIBUS. So when we're working with floor plans in Web Central, we're not actually loading in a Revit model. We're taking a snapshot of that level or model, and that's what we're working with in Web Central. So just publishing, you can publish a current level, or you can publish all the levels in a particular model. So a nice feature to quickly publish all the levels within a building. You don't have to open floor by floor and publish that way. It will scan through all of your floors. So by doing that, I'll flip over and just show that Flash file that gets created in ARCHIBUS. So I'll just sign in. And I'll take a look at this in the Space Console. So for those who attended the 21.2 webinar, this Space Console will be familiar to you and the functionality within. So we'll select the building and floor that we want to work with. It loads this Flash file, so we can see that it's created these files that we're seeing over in Web Central. We can hover over individual assets and see which division occupies that space. We can change highlights to show room categories. And then hover over those or change labels to show categories as well. So changing the text that displays when we hover over. And now we can hover over and see which category that space occupies. So as we zoom in, once we get zoomed in far enough, we can see that that text gets displayed actually within the space as well. So right from here, we can select a room, and we can view that selected room. Click this checkbox beside that room record, and now we can update any information for that space, and if ARCHIBUS is the source record or the source information to for the updates, then reading database fields back in the model will bring in any changes that you make through Web Central into those model parameters. So very powerful and kind of round-tripping this data update and synchronization of showing this here. So we can make any kind of changes and save and have that reflected back in the model as well. So that's where I will leave off the presentation and open the floor for any questions that anyone might have.
Thanks, Jasmine. That's great. We did get a couple of questions in, and I'd like to invite anybody else to add their questions into the lower right-hand quadrant of the GoToMeeting console. The first question that I have here is about 3D models and the functionality for that. Like, does any of it get leveraged in ARCHIBUS?
So the short answer to that is no. So there is no 3D visualization through Web Central, and I'll explain a bit as to why that is. So the 3D graphic rendering and walkthrough type imagery that you see throughout Revit requires that same workstation horsepower as mentioned previously. Also, being that ARCHIBUS Web Central interface uses that snapshot of the floor plan like we saw with the publishing process, the model graphics displayed in Web Central do not have that built-in 3D functionality that's available directly through the extension for Revit. Additionally, the nature of the facility data does not typically require the ability to be able to walk through a space in 3D. We're capturing the data for all of that space, and we can manage what we need to based off the information assigned to an asset. So obviously these features are a huge benefit in the design and construction lifecycle phases using Revit and the model.
Great.
And again, all that 3D aspect remains within your facility management model in the extension as well.
Okay. Justin, we had another one about the uncatalog command in the ribbon. What would that be used for?
Okay, yeah, I didn't describe that one, but it's more of an administration tool, and it allows you to strip the model-specific identification information from the asset and the ARCHIBUS record. So it's useful for resolving conditions like duplicate linked assets, or when you're making changes to elements, you can detach that from an ARCHIBUS record, make your change, and reattach it to the ARCHIBUS record.
Okay, great. I have somebody's asking which version of ARCHIBUS and Revit are you running on the demo today?
I'm running version 21.2 of ARCHIBUS and Web Central, and I'm using Revit 2012. I think 13 and 14 are also compatible with version 21.2 of Web Central.
Great. Okay, I have there's another question about the are the areas that update from Revit protected in Web Central against editing and vice versa?
So the area, as we can see from this dialog, is actually grayed out in Web Central. So by default, ARCHIBUS or the model is the source for area information because it actually is coming from an asset in a model or a drawing if you're using AutoCAD. So that functionality is the same through both applications. If you don't have drawings linked to your area or linked to ARCHIBUS, then there is a way to manually put in that area and have it updated into this read-only field. But yes, it is, the model is the source for area information. You can't update that from Web Central.
Okay, I had, there's three other questions. I've got two. Can shared parameters be used in the data mapping to ARCHIBUS?
Yes, so shared parameters can be used in any of the data mapping definitions between the model and ARCHIBUS. So a quick explanation for those not familiar with shared parameters. Shared parameters functionality in Revit gives the user the ability to add specific data that is not already defined for that asset. So you're basically creating a custom attribute holding specific information that can be added to an asset or a group of assets. So you can, the same process, you can easily map in shared parameters to any ARCHIBUS field as well.
Okay, and I also have one other one about if you're having an architect engineer complete updates to a model and they don't have direct access to the ARCHIBUS database, is there an easy way to update it without linking an entirely new model to the database? Do you want me to read that one again, or are you okay?
I think I understand the question. And I think there's a couple options to go about that. You could either have the new model coming back and take any of those changes, and as the ARCHIBUS Revit person, update ARCHIBUS with those changes using the same parameter mappings. Or the alternative to that would be having, I think that's the answer for this question, because the alternative is really having an in-house kind of ARCHIBUS and Revit modeler to do those changes. So yeah, you would get that updated model back with the changes. You can keep the ARCHIBUS mapping and then bring any changes into ARCHIBUS with the on-site Revit modeler.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Jasmine. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Definitely want to work